All right, welcome back to the Winning Plays podcast, and the Boston Celtics season is done. They fall in, frankly, pretty ugly fashion in Game 6 to the Golden State Warriors, losing the NBA Finals by a margin of 4-2 in the series. My name is Brian Robb, joined today by Brendan Jackson to break it all down. Make sure you're following him on Twitter at JackSOBD. Jax, this was we're not going to go. We have to. We'll be keeping things in perspective right now, and we'll do that towards the end of the pod. But we have to get the tough stuff out of the way first, and that is what was Game 6. And I don't know, for the first 3 minutes of that game, I was making sure I had the plane booked to San Fran for Game 7. I was cursing another long plane ride. I was like, okay, this is kind of how they came out against Milwaukee and Miami in those back to the wall situations. But then the Warriors were just ready with a hell of a counterpunch. And I guess I'll start with you this, like, when you look at, it was obviously a bit of both, the Celtics floundering and the Warriors coming back. Like, where do you give more credit to in that Game 6 in terms of how things went down?
I think it's kind of a microcosm of the series, but I feel as though if in the beginning you thought the Celtics were the better team, which I did, then you say the Celtics floundered. They had the opportunity to keep, their foot on the gas, and they ran out of it. Now, if you're on the opposite side and said the Warriors are battle tested and they have Steph Curry, one of the best players in the league and in league history, then you're like, yeah, this is not out of expectation. But like I said, I expected the C's to be the better team, and I expected a much better effort in this game.
It was a situation where, from a 14-2 start to being down by 5 at the end of the first quarter, it all seemed to unravel quickly. And there's, a lot of things went wrong, but I think arguably the biggest thing that went wrong outside of the clear turnover issue was just perpetual, was that just the absolute no-show from the bench for 2 straight games in this series now. And that when you compared that to what the Warriors were getting from their bench, which was just more monster games from the likes of Poole and Gary Payton II, the fact that they couldn't even get anything out of White, Pritchard, or Grant that entire pretty much 2 straight games. Like, you maybe win Game 5 if you get something from one of those guys. But that was a situation where they picked a really bad time just to fall off the map.
Yeah, it was definitely a bummer. But it's all part of the ecosystem of this series and this game and how they both played. Because when they couldn't get anything out of their bench because they were all covered. So right. Like the Celtics had to double or hedge hard or push up, and in the pick and roll on guys like Curry because they're that good. When the Warriors doubled Tatum or Brown or whatever, they were able to have active hands. They were able to deflect passes and bait the C's into turning the ball over because they were so stuck in their bad spacing. They just remained locked in. So if they had cleaned up those things, maybe moved to space, maybe the bench players could get open a little bit more, and then maybe give another chance. But to your point, there were a couple times Pritchard had a couple of wide open threes that he just missed. And if you're not going to hit at least one of those, 1 out of 3 in the first half, it just doesn't bode well. It's like you're not feeling confident. And Ime had to play them because in Game 5, the starters ran out of gas. And so, like, I don't blame him for playing them. I know there's a lot of people that were like, just play, everyone 48 minutes. And it's like, okay, well, then you'll lose. And then they're like, well, but it's like, people were saying, like, play Marcus Smart. He's got 3 fouls. Who cares if he fouls out? At least they'll go down swinging. It's like, okay, well, then they're going to lose. So it's like, it was an impossible task to ask when, to your point, the bench were providing very little.
Yeah. And in terms of Ime, he ran through his gamut of options. And we saw again, like in the second half of this game, and I think the next person like Jayson Tatum just had absolutely nothing. Like there was just nothing in whether that was injury related, just fatigue related, or just like an all around stinker. It was 1 of 8, 2 points when, Jalen had it going, Horford had it going to give, little slivers of hopes for this team after they, to climb out of a 20-point hole, which is just which is rough to do against this team in even normal circumstances, much less a closeout game. But he scored 2 points in the second half, and it was a situation when Tatum was on the bench to start the fourth quarter. And at first I was like, wow, like that's incredible that Ime is like trying to give him some rest right now. But I guess that kind of shows you how dire it was with Tatum right there, and how, obviously how bad he had been in that second half.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I don't necessarily think he was benched because he was bad. I think it was
they're trying to give him some legs, but
he was terrible. He was terrible this whole series. Like I was looking back at, the losers for the last 10 years. Like who was the best player on losing teams, and like how can I evaluate how bad Jayson Tatum was in this series? And he was by far the worst best player in the last 10 years for any finals loser. And now I haven't done a ton of research, but I basically went back to Basketball Reference and looked at all the game scores for all the players for every loser.
Okay.
And Jayson Tatum was far and away lowest. Jaylen Brown by game score was markedly better than Tatum in this series. And he wasn't that great either. And he wasn't that great. Like he was in the bottom, quarter of bad, game scores.
Right.
So again, that's just one stat, and that's not the end all be all, but that's just I was talking on Twitter last night about how terrible Jayson was in this series. And, people were obviously upset with me, and I get it, but I had to stop and be like, okay, if everyone's calling me an idiot, I need to make sure I'm not being an idiot. And I'm not. He was awful. It's and he was actually not that great the whole playoffs in terms of again, one stat. All I had time for was looking at this one stat to try to get a sense of how good he was. The only time he was the best player in a series was against Brooklyn. Giannis was way better, and Butler was way better in terms of this stat. So it's just, again, one piece of the picture, but it was if you're going to be the best player on a finals team, you got to show up, and he didn't. And I don't want to hear about injury. The last thing I'll say is I don't want to hear about injury. I really don't want them to do the Bruins thing where they come out and they 2 weeks later, it's oh, well, he has nerve damage in his shoulder or something. It's no. If he's out there, everyone's hurt. If he's out there,
right,
he can.
But
play.
To be fair to him, he was asked last night and he died. He didn't say anything about it.
Oh, he did. No, he was awesome in the post game. Oh my God, he was the best. Yeah. I was just I was texting you, being if they come out and they say blah blah blah. No, they came out, they owned it. I give them a ton of credit for not doing what, and I shouldn't have even thought they'd do it because they don't do that stuff.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So the Tatum, just looking at the numbers for the series, it's kind of wild. He shot 45% from 3-point range. Yeah. It's wow, that is you hear that, you're wow, the Celtics won the series.
Of course.
But then he shot 31% from 2-point range. And he also shot.
These are at the rim. These aren't mid-range.
There's a lot. Yeah. I want to see what his rim numbers in the series, but they certainly were not pretty. And he shot 65% from the line, which didn't matter in this game, but was, definitely hurt the Celtics in a couple of the previous losses. But just, again, you just wonder, both physically and mentally, he just did not have it in this game. Some of the wild shot attempts at the rim, the absolute prayers he threw up there. And I think that was maybe the second quarter when things just started unraveling. And then when it was all right, when Tatum is doing this kind of stuff, that's when it's it's game over. And
they're grasping for straws.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think the biggest difference is for as up and down of a playoff run that Tatum had, he was at his best in Bucks game 6, all their elimination games before. He had really good games, whether it was Miami against the Bucks. And that was the biggest surprise here, is that it just wasn't there. He had a good first quarter, but once the things started going sideways, I don't know. Did you think the post up stuff early was obviously working? And I thought did they just go away from it once things started unraveling? It seemed like that was, at least they weren't turning the ball over as much from down there. I don't know whether the Warriors adjusted and tried to take that away, not giving them those switches as much, but that once they got back to what they were doing the last 3 games, it was just insanity over and over, like doing the same crap.
Yeah. I mean, I think 2 things happened. One, they doubled harder on the post ups, and then they got deflections. You know, there were a couple just stupid, like, I don't want to say lazy passes, but just like, you can't try to pass over the top against when you're being doubled by Draymond Green. Like, he's done this his whole career. That's how he built his whole persona, you know, and they kept trying it. And then they also, you know, were getting good shots and missing them. So the post-ups were working, and so was everything else. Derek White got to the rim like 4 times in the first half and missed all of them. Like that, and I know he'll be better. Like, I know with a full training camp, he'll be on the team, he'll be fully acclimated, and I know he's better than that. But just back to your bench point, just an awful, awful time to just totally not step up, you know?
It was. And I mean, and what hurt them even more is the fact that like Ime went into the bench early, which again makes sense in terms of trying to go smaller and, you know, spread out the Robb and Horford minutes, because going double bigs for like against their smaller lineups, that's tougher to do. But obviously things went haywire in that. He doubled down on the bench, and he kind of had to after game 5, because it's like, oh, they can't play any worse than this. They had been, you know, they don't win a couple of the last 2 series without Derek White and Grant Williams game 7 against the Bucks. But in this game, in this series, those guys just like after game 1 were just pretty much ghosts. Yeah. And it's a situation where, I mean, the plus minuses are like bananas, but they kind of just tell the story for this game.
No, totally. And I honestly, I don't, there's a lot of things you can kill Ime for in this series. There really is. The fact that he never adjusted. Like, he just said, we're going to keep playing the same way we played. And guess what? He lost the series because of it. And then, but going to the bench after the way game 5 happened, there was no way Celtics were going to win if the starters played 48 minutes or high 40s. There was just no way. That's why they lost. You know, you could say they lost game 5 because of free throws and turnovers for sure, but like, they were tired at the end. They had nothing at the end of game 5. So I don't blame him for being he's at home, you know.
Right. This is where these guys are supposed to be able to give you something.
Exactly. And it's just, it didn't work. I think it was the right lever. It just didn't work, unfortunately.
Elsewhere for this game, I mean, and on top of all the Celtics struggles in this game, I mean, the Warriors, they didn't play a perfect game by any means, but I mean, the shots they were getting, like Draymond started to hit jumpers. Otto Porter,
they were wide open.
I mean, they're wide open. They're wide open, but like those are shots. He had wide open shots all series.
I know. His shot is a funhouse mirror for sure. But I just feel like you can't really overreact to that. I mean, I think the bottom line is it's all about Steph Curry. Like, the Celtics, as much as we love Jayson Tatum and as much as we think he has the potential to get there, you know, in terms of being that legit number 1, you know, killer, like absolute killer, he is way closer to Klay Thompson than he is to Steph Curry at this point in his career. It's just like, he's just not a killer. Like, he's just not someone who's going to rise up and, you know, pull in your face off the dribble. He had so much trouble creating his own shot in this game and this series. And that's not something he's necessarily struggled with in the past. I think credit the Warriors D, but also like, you got to be able to at least affect the game more than he did if you're going to want to be considered the best player on a finals team. And so it just seems like for this game, the gulf just widened even more. And so I'm excited to see, you know, what they can do next year. They are still so young, but man, like, it's just Steph Curry. And I know he's one of the greatest players ever, but like, man, that golf is huge. It's huge.
Well, it's a situation with Curry where no matter, I mean, it's just final numbers for the series, 31 points per game, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 48% from the field, 43% from 3, while easily taking the most shots out of anyone in those series. Like, those are insane splits. Yep. And no matter what the Celtics threw at him defensively, he just did, okay, you're going to have to give me something. It's like, okay, you're going to press up on me. I'm going to drive by you and finish at the rim, despite being so small. Or you're going to throw doubles at me when I am on the drive. I'm going to kick it out for the three. Or if you're going to play drop coverage and, okay, I'm going to kill you that way. So he pretty much pulled the gamut. And that was the Celtics and Ime, I guess, like, in another world, I think you maybe try to just, go super small and try switching against him in a game. But at the same time, it's like you were getting nothing out of your bench. So you weren't going to like throw one of those guys in the starting five to do that. And so that was a situation. I mean, certainly not at the end of the series. And that wasn't guaranteed to work either. So it was a situation where, Curry beat the best defense in the league and he beat it handily.
Yeah, that's all true. But I still would have done it. I still would have put Derek White in for one of them, because here's the thing. And I know you asked me this, I think before game 6, like, would you do it? And I was like, no. And of course, now I'm playing Monday morning quarterback. I definitely would have done it. They got out rebounded in this game. It
is kind of wild. It's wild. Like, if you're giving up those rebounds, then it's like, okay, then you should not be playing those guys together against this team. Like,
exactly.
And the fact that they were killed on the offensive glass so much in the series, like there was not, Robb couldn't move. He was giving you what he could, but from a rebounding standpoint, he had 2 defensive rebounds in this game in 32 minutes. Like, that kind of just, shows you what it is. Horford, I'll give him credit. He showed up well in this game. 19
third quarter was awesome.
Third quarter was great for him. The post-ups to start the game. If anything, you wonder, like, 8 shot attempts in this game where it was clearly not enough for him. But by and large in the series, like, he had I think an underwhelming series as a whole compared to the postseason run on a variety of fronts and just being cooked by, the defense. But it was something where, you wonder if they made that adjustment in game, it's one of those things where, like, winning game 3 and going up 2-1. Like, I think I was kind of expecting this adjustment to happen in game 3. The Warriors made it by benching Looney and putting Otto Porter Jr. in the starting 5. That didn't do a ton, but I think it made the rest of the rotation. It just made the rest of the rotation make a lot more sense for the rest of the game.
It's so true. It was such a funny adjustment where I was like, oh my God, Kerr is overreacting. That sucks. Looney's like one of your best players, like been, one of your Celtics killers. And it worked. Like, it totally, and I cut you off, but exactly what you said. It just changed the whole rotation in a way that favored them.
Right.
And man, as good as Looney was, when he got into foul trouble, like, they played better. They played better, smaller the whole game, and they still in the whole series, and they still out rebounded the Celtics big. So it's like it didn't matter. And to your Robb point, like, I think this is it's a really great big 3. Robb, Jaylen, and Jayson, and I think obviously there's potential to be very, very good. The problem is the one problem with all that is Robb is never going to be healthy. Like, he's just never, especially the more minutes he plays.
You can't count on him to be healthy. I guess you put that for in the postseason, I'd say.
Here's the thing, B. Let's set our calendars for 10 years from now, and we'll find out who's right.
Yeah, it's true.
He's never going to be healthy. It's fine. I still think you invested him. I still think you play him, but you just need Robb insurance. And I think he didn't even play every game this season. He didn't even play a ton this season, and he still, like, wasn't there at the end. You know what I mean? 100%. So it's just, he's so great. He's so great. And it's just a bummer that, like, the way he's constructed, just not going to allow him to be great for 100% of the time.
Yeah, it's part of the package. It's why he dropped to 28 in the draft in the first place. But you saw, like, that was, 75% of Robb, 80% of Robb in this series. And it would have been potentially a different story here, but that was certainly, if you look at the what ifs in this series, like, you would have liked to see if him at closer to 100% changes a lot of things on both sides of the floor.
That's the only injury I'll allow, because that one is well documented surgery. Yeah. Like, I don't even think Gary Payton was that hurt. Like he went from having a broken elbow out for the season to being one of their best, scrappiest, so I just, with all that physicality that he was giving, like, I just can't believe that his elbow was really as broken as they were letting it seem it was. It's just get out of here with that.
I mean, he looked damn good. He's
awesome. He's awesome. He's like a smart.
Was he the best bench player in this series? He might be. Like, I mean, I guess like Poole had a couple.
No, Poole is awful.
I mean, but Poole had a couple like impactful. Like Poole had like his game 5 impact was huge.
Every Poole shot is an answered prayer. I tweeted that last night. I mean, those half court end of series, like step backs, get out of here with that. Like, I don't know what he did in a former life to be able to get those shots in, but man, he is going to, he got on I don't know if he was even a hot mic, but he and Wiggins got on a hot mic saying they're both going to make a bunch of money. Like, oh, we're going to secure the bag while they were celebrating, and good for them. Right.
Yeah.
But like, if some team overpays for Poole, it's going to be the Sacramento Kings.
Yeah. I mean, he's like Jordan Clarkson, essentially. That is going to be his career, which is fine. Jordan Clarkson makes a lot of, money.
He's a worse Jordan,
but he's
Clarkson,
not. Yeah, he's worse
now. He's still young.
He's still young. He's only 22. So I think I'd say his ceiling is higher than Jordan Clarkson once he gets in his prime. But yeah, I mean, he's in the perfect role in this team where he literally, his responsibility is just to come light it up and as like the second or third option when you have a couple guys who can shoot the lights on the floor next to you. So you're not going to have to face, elite defenders. So
he's got a little bit of pest in him too, when he slapped Smart's hand away. Did you see that? So, I mean, if you're a Golden State fan or a non-Celtics fan, you love that. But as a Celtics fan, you got to be like, how does Smart get, that rep and not, it's just, he's never going to get that benefit,
Yeah. So who else did we talk to? I mean, we talked about Tatum, we talked about Al, we talked about Horford a little bit.
We got to talk about Jaylen, man.
Yeah. Jaylen was a beast in game 6. They would have lost by probably 25 without him.
That second half surge was really impressive. But the same problems persist with Jaylen.
Yeah.
Dribbling into a crowd and not knowing what to do with it or not being able to do anything.
I want to know what happens in these like during the film sessions in these series where I know you have like limited options if you're the Celtics offensively, but like they can, and the Warriors are very like, they make you have to like hit your spots. You can't wait too long to pass it. Like stuff like that was even more important against a team like this. But it was like they're laying out the same track every time, and the Celtics, like, they would take the bait over and over again. And you just wondered, like Ime and the coaching staff must have been pulling out their hair, being like, what do we do? Like, this.
Well, I think they're partly to blame though, too. We can't just give them a free pass. Like, their spacing was the exact same on every one of those plays. No one ever moved. Yeah. And I get why they can't move, because a lot of times as the driver, you are throwing these passes to a spot. You're not throwing them to a guy. That's why you see random plays where they will throw it into the corner blindly and no one's there because someone hasn't rotated. And it looks like a terrible turnover from the passer, but it's obvious that the guy didn't do the assignment. You know what I mean? He was supposed to be in the corner. So the problem is they never adjusted their spacing, and the Warriors banked on that they wouldn't. So they would just leave their guy where it was like almost the impossible angle pass and just bank on the Celtics not being able to get there by the time that they pressured the ball handler. And they won every time. Jaylen just dribbled it off somebody's hand or off his foot into a crowd. And it's just like, there were a few times earlier in the series where he'd take like a few, probing dribbles and back up to see, but nope, it was, I'm going to go and I'm going to be the biggest guy on the court and most athletic guy. And you just can't do that against the Warriors. And I hope that's like a lesson learned, right? It's a hard pill to swallow to learn it in the finals, but like, I hope that these are the kind of lessons that they learn, that they just need to be that much better. Like the whole second half turnaround, the whole, Kevin Durant, Giannis, Jimmy Butler, it's not good enough. Like, it's just not. Like, you got to be that much better to actually win the finals. And I think that's what people like fans and stuff like that are kind of missing the boat on. They had a really good opportunity, and it's going to be really hard to get back there. Like, Giannis was thinking, I'm going back. Devin Booker was thinking he was going back. Like, It's just so hard to get back to the finals. And I hope they have another level. I hope they have several more levels. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's going to have to be, a team effort in that front. They have the option of just running back this team with obviously some upgrades to the end of the bench in free agency or via trades if they want, or they can look at what they did here and maybe, shake things up in the second unit a little bit or move, maybe young pieces or secondary pieces for more win now stuff. Like,
I don't want to put you on the spot because I know there's going to be so much off season to digest and it's a lot of moving pieces and it's a lot of math you got to do. But like, what would you do? Like, would you try to shake up? Not obviously, the three untouchables, right? Jaylen, Robb, and Jayson, untouchables. I'm not talking like people talking about breaking up the Jays. Like, I think is crazy. But
yeah, like, I mean, we're not going to even. Yeah, you don't even have to
entertain it.
Entertain that.
But like, everyone else, would you try to ship off for another star? Would you try to,
So yeah, I mean, it's worth. You have to throw around that stuff. I don't see a star that's like attainable for what they're willing to offer. And I think your best, I mean, you have, I wrote about this on Mass Live today. You have these trade exceptions, which, can not get you star level guys, but can bring in a $10, $50 million player if you want. I think the biggest question that will hang over this team in the offseason as we start in terms of what their options are is like, how much is ownership willing to spend?
Right.
If they're obviously, they're set up to be a tax team right now. You've seen now, I think this year they avoided the tax at the trade deadline while also, upgrading the bench and Derek White. In this series, it's clear that, and even one more veteran wing piece would have come in handy a lot.
Yeah, a PJ Tucker maybe.
Just something either defensively or offensively, they could have, because they obviously once you had nothing from the three guys you count on there, it was a dead end because literally the rest of your bench was just rookies and, min guys that weren't going to sniff the floor outside Nesmith, who just was, obviously not ready yet. So not, but at the same time, it's like, you can't fault them too much for that because this was a 500 team at the trade deadline. So what, that was going to be a pretty big gamble to go there. But now you've seen what this team can do if your ownership and obviously the urgency is there now. Al Horford's not getting any younger.
I know.
And so that is where if you green light some things and say, hey, we'll trade again, more future picks for guys that can help in these next 2 to 3 years. I think that needs to be, I think finding a versatile bench wing might be your best bet. And then because that makes, not only does that help you out there, but it also takes the minutes onus, like you talked about, Jax, like off some of your stars, which will hopefully help at May or June next year, if based on how they looked in this series.
Yeah, no, I think that's the play. I think I would agree. Go into the tax. Like, it's not my money. Easy for me to say. Go into the tax. You're 2 wins away from a finals. Really sell out. If you really think that Brown and Tatum are going to make a jump, and even with everyone else getting better, because they're going to get better, right? The Heat might get worse. They're going to get older. Yeah. They have some roster issues, right? But like, everyone else is going to get better. And I think the time is definitely now, because I think these guys, while I don't think they're there yet, I think they could be. Like, they're so young still. So like, I'm not ruling it out. And I think they are, to your point, just like 1 or 2 pieces away. What I do want to see next year, though, and I know this is so stupid, I'm talking about regular season next year, but I need to see if Hauser's going to be on the roster. I need to see him and Nesmith eat up regular season minutes. I need to see them get better. Like, they don't have to be great, but they need to get better. They need to not just like be white flag guys. And I need to see the whatever potential wing or backup point guard or whatever we get, the Celtics get, to eat up those minutes too, because no matter what, like, I just don't think they have another energy level. They were by far the younger team, and they couldn't match Golden State's energy. Yep. And it's just, that was a little scary for sure. So I just need, those are the 2 things. Even if they lose in the second round next year, if they do those 2 things, I don't think I'll be mad,
Right. Well, they're going to have plenty of time to look at that. They're not going to have plenty of time. They're going to have to get pretty busy right away here.
Right, July, right, to make a decision on the Fournier trade.
Yep. The TP, the big TP expires in July, mid-July, so they'll have a couple weeks of free agency to look at that. But that's going to be certainly a big one. And then obviously the draft, which probably won't be that big for them, but trade-wise, obviously we need to keep an eye on. And then same with the start of free agency on July 1st. We'll be back here at the Wing Plays podcast. We'll be pretty busy the next few weeks, kind of breaking all this all down, breaking down their options with B Jackson, the rest of the crew here. Make sure you're following him on Twitter at JackSOBD for plenty of off-season takes. And honestly, thanks to you guys too for listening this whole run. We've had really fun leadership. Jax, you've been a frequent contributor also. Thanks for hopping on board the whole way.
Anytime, man. Appreciate you having me in my pessimism. Appreciate it.
I thought today would be worse. I
cleaned it up a little bit. I was upset last night, obviously. But I will say, I think people should be upset. Like, I think, because I go back to, and I'll say it again, this will be the last thing I'll say, right, on this season. I think the C's were better. I think on paper they were better. In practice they were better. They were younger. They were deeper. They were a better defensive team. And they lost. And that should, if you agree with that premise, then you should be upset that they lost. So that's it. That's all I'll say. And that's why I'm upset.
Yeah. And if you look at the big picture of the series, it's like, okay, they should have won like 4 or something like that. Or 5, like one of those things that they should have been like, you probably weren't going to beat the Warriors in like with them playing like that in game 6, no matter what like the situation was, but you certainly should have been set yourself up for a game 7.
Yep.
Where again, if things go right, if you get something from the right guys, if Tatum doesn't lay an egg, then we might be talking differently here. So yeah, I think you're dead on with that. And so that's clearly going to be fuel this offseason for everyone involved. Everyone needs to be, I think, a little bit better top to bottom. You can point to all different places in terms of why they came up short here, but to their credit, they got there. They made a hell of a run here. That honestly was one of the most unlikely, if they had pulled it off, it probably would have been one of the most unlikely turnarounds in NBA history, from a sub 500 team to raising a banner. But in the meantime, it gave us plenty of content, so we appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. Silver lining.
Didn't have to do draft capsules for a month. So again, yeah, thanks everyone for listening. Rate, review, subscribe. Winning Plays Pod. We appreciate it. Make sure you're following us on Twitter, and we will talk to you guys next week. Get the full offseason breakdown and look ahead to draft and some of these trades that could formulate this offseason.